You don't have to take the entire week off of work. Great learning opportunities. Well, you come to Military Kids Vermont and it's free. Our kids are on vacation or school break too. They want some rest.
Vacation.
It's vacation.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our episode number 2 of Kitchen Spoons and Combat Boots podcast. With us today, we have Brian Stoudnour, a sitting member of MKVT, Military Kids Vermont. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Dan. Super happy to be here. Thanks for having me and Military Kids Vermont, part of this program.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I guess we can just jump right into it. Brian's been with family programs or been around our organization for a while, MKVT for a long time. How long have you been working with MKVT?
Boy, MKVT now, it's coming up on 10 years. Oh. Yeah, it's got to be pretty close to that. Yeah.
Wow. So, just tell us a little bit about MKVT, who you guys are, what you do, and we can just go from there.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. So Military Kids Vermont stems out of a program called Operation Military Kids. And that was stood up during the heat of, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and all the deployments that Vermont and mostly National Guards were undergoing, right? Which was a significant change to the National Guard program as it was seen. And so it was stood up in an effort to provide programming for the military kids who were facing deployments, right? And were facing hardships because one of their parents, if not both, were being taken away from their home for an extended period of time. And so Operation Military Kids was stood up as a way to provide programming for all military kids in the state. And this was a nationally funded program. Money was held with university extension land grant programs. That funding went away in about 2015. And so the people that were seated at the table in Vermont were looking down the pipeline of not having programming for military kids in the state other than Army National Guard specific kids in the state. And so those of us that were at the table at that time didn't like that perspective and felt like that would be, put an additional hardship on military youth and military families in the state. So we decided to keep going with a program and keep going with a non-formal working group to provide programming, resources, and benefits to the military kids as a whole in the state of Vermont.
Oh, great. What kind of things have you done recently for MKVT? I know my kids have been in, programming for MKVT. Yes, they have. My kids well.
Yep.
I remember what was a February vacation, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago. They did the mountain climbing and then they did the Taekwondo, which they loved.
Yeah.
They still talk about it.
Which is awesome. It's so great to have them part of the program. Glad that you took advantage of the program. And sometimes I wish there were more military parents like you out there, right? That jumped in as part of the programs. So Military Kids strives really hard to make programming available on a quarterly basis. We are a non-formal working group, so we don't have money that's coming in. So we rely really hard on community partners to assist us and provide us with space, provide us with programming, and sometimes provide us with staff. So we really strive to have quarterly functioning programs for the military families in Vermont. And what do we have going on right now? Upcoming, first and foremost, would be our February ice skating party. For the last several years, we've had a family skating party for military families in Vermont. We rent out Gordon H. Paquette Marine Ice Arena for a couple of hours this year it's going to be on February 17th on Sunday. We rent it out for a couple hours and we provide, access to free rentals and free ice time for military families. And then we always have some extra additional activities to do in the lobby area. And sometimes we're able to have snacks. So that's coming up next. Then after that, we lean in really heavy on Month of the Military Child. And if you didn't know, April is nationally known as Month of the Military Child, and Vermont recognizes that. And Military Kids Vermont, like I said, leans in heavy on that. And what do? We have lots of different activities that go on throughout that month. We do a virtual We have a virtual spirit week where we just incorporate, right? Like we send out to families flyers. We try to get folks to engage during that week. And we have lots of fun, different activities for the families and the military kids to do throughout that week. And it's just quick little activities they do at home. And then they can send us their feedback via Facebook. Just via Facebook is really our approach to things. And then we do things at the State House during Month of the Military Child.
I remember seeing that.
That's
cool.
a lot of fun. Yeah,
It's cool.
Yeah, we get buy-in from the Vermont Congress. And they do a House concurrent resolution for us, and we bring military kids into the House floor. They get recognized and honored in front of the whole House and applauded. It's really great. And then a lot of the time we get ushered off into the governor's ceremonial office, where there's a governor's proclamation that's read and passed by the governor, and the kids and families that are in attendance have about a 15-minute intimate moment with the Vermont state governor, which is really cool. Several years ago, the governor signed pardons for the kids that were missing school on that day. So they had a little slip from the gover's office.
That's a good one.
It was really cool. The kids really, really leaned into that one a whole bunch. It was pretty cool. So then we get through April. We have a week at the end of April. Most of the schools in Vermont take April break at the end of April, and so we jump in on that, and we provide a partner day camp, and that's a whole lot of fun. Last year we held it at Essex Elementary School. And that's a time when we lean really heavily again on our community partners to provide us with space and to provide us with programming so that our military kids, one, get to understand maybe a little bit more about the organizations that are at the table at Military Kids Vermont, as well as it just gives them it's not just one person, one organization giving them the programming. And so they're getting a varied type and style of programming from each of the partners that are at the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Thanks. Yeah.
So can anybody be part of MKVT? Like, say somebody wanted to volunteer, or what would an organization have to do to be included on the MKVT meetings? Is that something anybody can just walk into?
Yeah. So, I hesitate to say that anybody can walk into it, right? Because we are working with families and we are working with youth specifically. And so we do want the organizations and the people at the table to have a vested interest in military kids and in our military community in Vermont, and even better if they have youth programming experience,
right?
Or they have resources that they can bring to the table that are going to benefit the military families and help to make our quarterly events a reality. We have some great sponsors at the table that don't have youth programming experience, but they have a vested interest in the military community. And so they're able to invest in our programs, maybe sponsor programs for us. And so there's lots of different ways you can be at the Military Kids Vermont table.
Right.
And beyond those, you could just be maybe you're a service provider in the community at large, right? And part of that community at large in Vermont, being a Guard state, is the military community, right? They all have military community members and families that they're serving at the local levels. And so having them involved, understanding, how in some ways the odds are stacked against the military kids in Vermont, right? Really as a whole. And so how can they contribute to their betterhood and their betterment? And if they contribute back to those individual families and those individual military kids, they're going to then come back to the community in a better way and be able to provide things back to the community at large.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Very cool.
Yeah. And you mentioned a lot of the day camps, a lot of the programming that you put on. Is there a cost associated with it, or do you try to make everything cost-free for service members' families?
That is a really good question, and thanks for asking. We strive very hard and are really quite successful at being able to make these programs completely free to military kids and military families. So like a week of day camp, we do a 4-day day camp, right? Go anywhere else, you're going to be spending at least $250 if you're getting a deal, right? And that's a screaming deal.
And then you have commuting, you have the, altering your work schedule, all of that messy stuff.
Right. Well, you come to Military Kids Vermont and it's free. We provide 8 hours of programming a day during the day camp times. And, you do have to, most parents are going to have to go in a little late to work and leave a little early from work to pick their kiddo up. But still, you don't have to take the entire week off of work. And your kids are engaged with great learning opportunities and just fun, engaging military kid community development programs.
Oh, I wholly agree. Last year, we opted to go on a family vacation for break, kids break. And prior, we had, used the service and we had done the week camp, and the kids had so much fun. And then I had to break the news to the kids, we were going to go on vacation, and they were like, what, we're not going to go do Taekwondo again? We're not going to go do mountain climbing? And I was like, I guess you can. It'll save me a couple dollars, right. But like, no, we're going to go on vacation. They're like, oh, we were really looking forward to that.
That is so great to hear.
Yeah. And it's all military kids. They all share experiences. They've all been through the same things. So that was really empowering to hear from, your own kids who are military kids. So those camps are definitely great.
Definitely are. And you bring up a really good point, Dan, and thanks for really raising that. Developing that military kid community, right, is really critical, because being a guard state, there is no base in Vermont. We are one of 3 states that don't have a base on it. And so there's no embedded community resources, right, at the base for families to go into access to. There's no youth center that the kids can come to. There's no child care that the kids get to, right? And so they're spread throughout the state. Yeah. And they could potentially be the only military kid in their class or their grade. So they have no true peers that they're sitting beside. Those kids can sit there and talk about how, their mom's got to go away for training for a week. And then me as a civilian kid sitting right beside them, oh yeah, my mom went away too. Yeah, your mom went to Orlando for a professional conference, whereas that military kid's mom, right, maybe they went to annual training for 2 weeks, and during that AT, they were put through pretty rigorous training, pretty risky training, that their health, right, and the situation of the family could be at risk. So for them to have those peers and for us to be able to provide military-specific youth programming, military-specific family programming, and bring those families together so that they have the opportunity to chit-chat and to get to know each other on a true peer level is really important and critical to the health of our kiddos in the state.
And you almost have to go out of your way to get your kids to be involved with other military kids because, traditionally, Vermont Army National Guard, say 90% of the soldiers in the Vermont National Guard are M-Day. Right. And for those of you who don't know what M-Day is, the traditional drilling status is 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. So when your coworkers, you're only seeing them once a month on a weekend. There's not a lot of time unless you have, outside of work to get your kids together to really form that connection where active duty people living together on an active duty post, everybody who lives on post or off post, it's a military community. Right. Everybody who lives there is there to be there for the sole purpose of, hey, we're all in the military. This is, how we cohabitate. Yeah. So to try to keep that going in states like Vermont where we don't have that, it's difficult. And programming like MKVT, what they offer, it really makes it easier for the kids to have that connection and to share that bond. So really thank you guys for putting that on. Absolutely. People are always thanking soldiers for their service. Thank you for serving, the soldiers and their families. A lot of great stuff that you guys put on. And I think one of the biggest selling points when you got, before I signed my kids into it was, is it really a week of day camp for free? Right. And it really is just a week of day camp for free. And it's just like, really is. There's so many benefits and there's so many things that, Vermont Family Programs, MKVT can offer soldiers and their families. And I think just having this podcast and trying to get our voices out there and let people know, hey, we have, how was attendance normally? Do you guys normally sell out?
Our day camps, they'll fill within 2 weeks. Right. Every time.
Right.
Every time.
And what do you see? Do you see mostly like full-time soldiers, kids, or do you see M-Day soldiers, kids? Like what can we do to open that up? Is that something you see the same people using it over and over, or are we starting to grow our reach?
That's a really good question. And I got an easy answer, but it's a tough one for me to answer. Right. I'm going to be honest about it. Because we do see a lot of the same families that come back. And I think a lot of those families are full-timers. Yep. We definitely see some M days, but it's hard for us to get the word out to the M-Day soldiers and to the M-Day families, as family programs is well aware of, getting the information for the activities and the events that we hold in the hands of the M-Day soldiers, and maybe even better, the families of the M-Day soldiers, is a challenge that we face, just like family programs does.
Yeah. From a firsthand experience, I've spent, I retired with 20 years, and over half of my time was active duty and a little under half of it was M-Day.
Yeah.
And there definitely is a line of communication where, the part-timers, they're hard to talk to.
They are.
You go through the unit, the readiness NCOs, the admins, and they can push out and they can push out. But unless you're here full-time, really immersed in it, or being a full-time soldier, it's something that it's really easy to miss.
Go out to their local listservs, check with their schools, check with their local youth community programs, and see what day camps are available, because I know some will, right? Like YMCA is going to be holding them. 4-H, I know, has got some on the dial. I know our local school district is offering a day camp through the after-school program. And I know that there's other opportunities out there like that for families. But this might come a little late for those families, and so be ready, right? Have your time off, hopefully from your office, from your work, if you can do that, or have some other family members around that are ready to pick up the slack pick up the slack, right? I say slack, but it's not really slack, because the family has still got to work, still got to earn a paycheck, but we want to make sure that it engage our kids. And even if they can't go to day camp, which it's not always about day camp and getting out to day camp, right? Like, our kids are on vacation or school break too, but we want to be able to engage them, but engage them where they're at, And so, I got a 14 and 11-year-old at home. Again, we're not a military family, so these day camps are not an opportunity for our kids. But they want some rest and relaxation. So
it's vacation.
It's vacation, it's winter vacation, even better, right? Or even more so. So, right, we're already kind of holing up and spending more time inside, because there's less daylight hours, obviously, right? Like, you leave for work in the dark, and when do you get home?
Yeah, it's dark.
In the dark, man. And kids are not far from that, right? Kids are an hour away from that. And so giving them the space to take some time to game a little bit, right? Like, our electronic devices aren't the end all be all, but they're also not the end of the world, right? And so finding a happy balance with that. And with that, us too, right? Like, as adults, being able to, right? Like, lead by example for our kids, and not constantly have our phones with us, not constantly be on a screen. Showing them good habits of what to do with their screen time is really important. So not just giving them unfettered access to their screens, but
that's something we need to work on in our house for sure.
And it's really hard, right? It is really hard, because those things are so accessible. Right.
And Fortnite is really fun. Let's just be honest.
Fortnite's really fun, man. I get into a little the Call of Duty on the cell phone, I'm not a big gamer, but my boys are. And so it takes some adjusting for me. I'm a little older than you are, and I didn't have access to the games like you did. Not that you had access to the internet at the younger days, right? But yeah, it's so accessible. So modeling for them what is good behavior, and setting some parameters for them, and engage them in setting those parameters before vacation week comes up, right? Like, hopefully this podcast is launched when? Early February?
Yeah, first Wednesday in February.
Great. And so you have time to engage your kids in creating a plan for the week, right?
Right.
And part of that plan for the week should be, right, giving them some unfettered access, maybe not unfettered, but supervised, right, access to their devices.
Yeah. Well, I know for like my Nintendo, the kids all have a Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
That way there's no fighting. They all have the same games. Everything looks the same. We recently changed the color, so the colors don't all match anymore. I'm waiting for that to be a fight. But Nintendo's great, because they have an app where you can control the time, when they can log on, when it shuts off their Switch, and then their playtime. So you can literally manage that to the T. And we try really hard in our house to make sure that the TV's off as much as it can be off.
Yep.
I'm personally a huge board game fan.
Nice.
And I think that's really flowed onto my kids.
Right on.
I have 4 boys. My oldest is 15 and my youngest is 7. And we're always playing a board game. Cool. Christmas, birthday, somebody's getting a board game. And at this point, we have like 2 large bookshelves worth of just, analog dice pieces, board games, like no screens, no switches. And it's something that we really like to enjoy doing to really unplug.
Yeah.
So if
great.
if all the power goes out, we're not completely bored. The internet goes out, it's not the end of the world. Maybe it is for the 15-year-old.
Right.
But it's not a vacation unless you can do some of that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But getting your kids outside is really important too, right? Like we've talked about kind of relaxing. I want to throw a pitch in there for have a pajama day during vacation week. Just stay in your pajamas all day. Even the parents, like assuming you don't have to go to the office, right? Stay in your pajamas, have brunch instead of breakfast, right? Let everybody sleep in, have cocoa and popcorn for a movie afternoon, right? Like take some time for yourselves as a family because that's important. One, for your physical health, but also for the mental health and the camaraderie of the family as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Those downtimes are important to the family, But when you don't have that going on, go outside, right? There's lots to do in Vermont in the wintertime. Again, we're coming into February break. February is cold. February is dark in Vermont, right? And so engage with that. If you're a Vermonter or live in Vermont or live in New England and you don't do outside activities in the winter, boy, is it a long winter. But there are a lot of great resources for that. Vermont has a 4th grader ski program. Where they can sign up for it and they get, I think it's like 6 days at a couple of different resorts around the state. And it's like $50.
Wow.
It's pretty reasonable, and a lot of times that comes with some rentals too. A lot of your local schools and communities have ski programs for the kids, right? That again, bring that cost down significantly. A lot of ski resorts and mountains in the state of Vermont have discounted opportunities for military families,
right?
Which is pretty critical. And a lot of times you are going to need a military ID to be able to, receive those discounts. So if you don't have a military ID, make sure you get one if you're eligible for one, right? Don't let just your service member have one, but the other Deere's eligible dependents in their world should have one too, so that they can get these some of the discounts that are available around the state for skiing and for lots of other things, really, without having to have the service member there, right? Because the service member has to work sometimes and can't be there all the time. But beyond skiing, we talked about sledding. A lot of communities have a sledding hill that they all go to. And some of those communities have sleds that are just available, right? That are at the hill or at a local store that's like right across the street from the hill. Talking about sledding, coming through Barrie, and I noticed that the gas station across the street from the cemetery had like 30 sleds standing outside of it. And I was kind of wondering why. And then I looked across at the cemetery, and that is the Barrie Sledding Hill. So
snow is coming.
Snow is coming. They were prepped for it. They were ready to rock and roll. So a lot of towns have things like that, right? Like that community organizations just kind of step up and they have resources available close to a sledding hill, A lot of communities in the state of Vermont have their own ice skating, whether they create their own man-made rink or they have a pond or a lake that they oversee and kind of manage and keep swept. And a lot of those also have ice skates that are readily available for folks too. Right. We were talking earlier about skiing and talking about how it's cost prohibitive and it certainly can be, right? Talked about some of those discounts, but also another great resource for families to have, military or not, but it's great for our military families, is that the local libraries a lot of times have passes for museums. in the States. They have passes for state parks, right? National parks. They also have, a number of years ago, it was a big push in the state. Libraries were going out and writing grants to get their own equipment to be able to loan out. So in a lot of communities around the state, you can go right into your local library with your library card and you can check out a set of snowshoes. Sometimes you can even check out a set of cross-country skis and the whole ski gear. So
It's wild.
yeah, if you could go with your family, you could walk out the door with a set of 6 pairs of snowshoes and go ahead and go for a snowshoe hike for the morning, right? Really cool, super accessible, and you can really kind of snowshoe just about wherever you want. Please be mindful of private property postings around,
Right.
but really there's lots of resources around our communities for getting outside, and a lot of us probably have sledding hills in our own yards. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I snowblow this massive, I go out into our yard with our snowblower after I get done with snowblowing everything that really needs to be snowblowed. And I make this giant pile of snow in the middle of our yard and it hangs on until like May sometimes. But we dig snow caves. You
Right.
can Google how to dig a snow cave and you can create them in your own yard, which is a lot of fun and kids really get into it, and they'll be digging their way and creating this really cool little cabin for themselves, right? Like an igloo or a snow cave, really. And that's just a lot of fun. Yeah, super a lot of fun.
And that's, the home skiing. That's what really kicked off. We had a little hill in the backyard.
Okay.
We had a little fake snowboard from like Walmart or something like that. And Nolan went down that a couple times and he was like, you know what, Dad, I'm going to be like a professional snowboarder.
Nice.
It's just the small things like that. What kicked off,
It is.
the whole skiing and snowboarding adventure. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes.
Right. The point is just go outside, right? Like get outside, get that vitamin D when that sun's shining, even if it's not shining, but be outside with your kids and encourage your kids to go outside.
Definitely.
Really important, winter or not, get them outdoors. It's good for us.
So that leads me into, I want to talk about your events coming up and what's the best way for families to register? Where can they find this information? Hey, I want to take part in this camp coming up. Where do I find it? Where can I go? What's the easiest access?
Great question. So being a non-formal group, right? We are not a 501c3. We are not an incorporated organization to be honest, in any way, shape, or form. We are a concerned group of citizens and individuals that want to provide programming to military kids. And so we have a Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at MKVT, Military Kids Vermont, but it's MKVT. Super easy. And we post all our flyers and everything to there. You can message us through that, through Facebook. And that's really the way to access Military Kids Vermont.
And I know our program really takes your posts and your events through our Facebook, and we really try to share that to double the reach. So
super appreciated.
Yeah, the VTNG family programs on Facebook is where you can find us, and then we'll push out MKVT and Brian their information. So hopefully we can share events and we can get high attendance for everything.
It would be great. Yeah, we love seeing our things fill. We love seeing the military families and the military kiddos there. Yeah.
I've done the ice skating before. Ice skating is super fun, super easy.
Fun.
And there's so much to do for the kids. I know you guys, in the room next to the rink, there's that warm room where you guys had snacks out. You had water. You had the big tic-tac-toe out. So kids were playing tic-tac-toe, the ones who weren't particularly interested in skating.
Right.
So there's something for everybody.
There is. We really try to make sure that it is an all-inclusive activity for all abilities and ages of the military family. We do.
Well, thank you so much for putting all that on and all of your events. It's greatly appreciated, and hopefully people can hear this and it'll, just more people can enjoy and share. MKVT has so much to offer, all the camps and everything going on you guys do. What are good online resources available? Are there online resources available for family soldiers?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, right, like we talked about earlier about like limiting your time online, but also giving them the freedom to have some of that time online too, you know? And
Right.
so, one of the things you can do during breaks, during weekend time, anytime there's downtime really is there are lots of resources that are available online for kids and for families for educational purposes and for just fun, more fun learning experiences, right? So, 4-H has a wealth of resources that are available free online to do lots of different programming, whether it be, make a birdhouse to to making snowflakes, right? Like it's and everything in between. And then there's also Vermont Public. Through Vermont Public and Vermont Public Radio, as I still like to call it, they also have through their PBS, because they're a community, right? They're embedded with PBS now. VPR and PBS came together, or Vermont Public Television came together to create Vermont Public, and they have some great resources available online for educational resources and learning opportunities and fun and just fun engagement. Continuing with Vermont specific stuff, and you don't have to be living in Vermont to get these. You can access them anywhere in the world on the internet, right?
Online resources.
Online resources for free is the Echo Leahy Center for Lake Champlain. The Echo Center, they have also a great amount of free resources online for you to be able to print out, download, whatever you're going to do with it, and engage in learning opportunities and fun learning opportunities online, which is really cool. And then you can definitely step beyond the borders of Vermont and Vermont run organizations. NASA's got a wealth of resources, like so much on their website. It's really cool. Smithsonian, the Smithsonian Institute, again, so many resources available right at your fingertips that you can access for free 24/7 wherever you are. So if you aren't right, like if you don't have the creative nature, right? You can't take yourself back to what it was like to be a kid, like I still can, because I've been working with youth for so long, right? If you can't do that and you just need some assistance in what are some other things I can do with my kid, or what are some other things my kid can do in their time off from school, check out those resources. There's lots of other ones available, but those are some that are really good and consistent, and they have some really cool experiences for the youth and the families to engage in that, again, are free for anybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, please remember Military Kids Vermont. We're always looking for new community partners at the table, and also not just you don't just have to be an organization to jump in with Military Kids Vermont. You can just be a concerned individual that has something to give, right? Time, money, right? Programming, space. We don't have any space for us necessarily. So we're always kind of begging and borrowing space from different organizations and different groups of people. We'd love to have you part of our programs.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. We'll see you in the future. We'll be around, I'm sure. Lots of events coming up and lots of things to do. So thank you so much for joining us today. To our listeners out there, thank you for joining us as well. Just one more Facebook plugin and Instagram, VTNG Family Programs, Vermont National Guard. So thank you for listening in, and we'll hope to see you next time, or hear us next time.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dan. Military Kids Vermont really appreciates this opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Have a great day.
You too. For more information or support, please reach out to the Vermont Military Family Support Center's toll-free number, 888-607-8773. The preceding content does not constitute endorsement by the Department of the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, Vermont National Guard, or Vermont Military Family Programs of the organization's products and services contained therein. Further, the Vermont Military Family Programs assumes no responsibility for the consequences of using the products or services provided by the organizations or resources listed. Vermont Military Family Programs makes every effort to present our clients with reputable resources. We cannot guarantee the validity of said resources, and the use of such resources is voluntary.